Abandoned on the road, the mail-order bride had no hope until a wealthy rancher reined in his horse. The wind whipped dust into the air, turning the horizon into a swirling haze. Somewhere far ahead, the faint outlines of the trade road shimmered under the heat. The road was quiet now, but it had not always been so. Once it had been filled with traders, miners, and travelers moving from one settlement to another. Now it was empty, except for a single figure walking slowly, her boots kicking up dust with each step. Ilara Vance had arrived on Caldera 9 only days ago. She had left Earth with hope and dreams, trusting a promise made through a mail-order contract that felt safe and secure. She had imagined a new life on a frontier world, perhaps even a small family of her own. But that dream had ended cruelly. Her intended husband had met her at the landing station, his expression a mixture of disappointment and irritation. He had looked her over once, then once more, before shaking his head. "You're not what I expected," he had said coldly, tossing her credits onto the platform and walking away, leaving her alone on a world that already felt alien. Ilara had tried to find shelter at nearby colonies, but the settlements were few, scattered, and cautious. They didn't welcome strangers lightly, especially ones arriving without resources or connections. She had no credits, no transport, and no one to help her navigate the vast, dangerous stretches of Caldera 9. Now, as the sun sank closer to the horizon, she felt the first pangs of fear. Her water supply was low, her stomach empty, and the planet's infamous wildlife prowled unseen beyond the dunes. Night on Caldera 9 was not gentle. It brought freezing temperatures, sharp winds, and predators that stalked silently. Ilara adjusted the strap of her bag over her shoulder, her fingers brushing against the few items she had managed to bring with her. A basic multi-tool, a small ration pack, and a tattered hollow diary. She had no one to rely on, and the loneliness pressed against her like a physical weight. She had walked this road for hours, perhaps even a full day. The heat had been unbearable at noon, but it was nothing compared to the uncertainty that came with nightfall. Every sound made her heart jump, the faint rustle of dust across the ground, the distant call of an unseen bird, or the whisper of wind across the rocks. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, she saw it, a silhouette against the fading sunlight. A horse, or some kind of large, strong animal, unlike the one she had ever seen on Earth. It moved with deliberate calm, its hooves kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. And atop it sat a man, broad-shouldered and tall, wearing the typical garb of a frontier rancher, practical, dusty, and perfectly suited to surviving in this harsh environment. Ilara froze, unsure whether to step forward or hide. She had been told stories of strangers on the frontier, some kind, some dangerous. She didn't know which this man would be, but as he drew closer, there was something about him that set her mind at ease. He did not lunge forward or call out aggressively. He merely guided his horse with a steady hand, surveying the road calmly, as if he expected to find someone. When he stopped a few meters away, he did not immediately speak. Instead, he lowered his head slightly, observing her with a careful, measured gaze. The silence was long, almost uncomfortable, but it carried a quiet authority. Finally, he spoke. "You're alone," he said. His voice was calm, deep, and steady. "That road isn't safe for someone walking by themselves." Ilara hesitated, unsure whether to respond. She wanted to speak, but words felt heavy and fragile in the dry, hot air. Finally, she managed, "Yes, I was left behind. I don't know where to go." The man nodded, almost as if he had expected her answer. He shifted slightly in the saddle. "Come with me. I have a ranch not far from here. You can rest, get water, food, and decide what to do next." Ilara blinked, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to run, strangers could be dangerous. But another part of her, the part that had survived so far by trusting small kindnesses, told her this man was different. She nodded silently, and he gestured for her to follow. The horse moved again, and she matched her pace to the slow trot. The journey was silent except for the wind and the crunch of the dust beneath their feet. Every now and then, Alara glanced at the man riding beside her, his posture perfect, his movements smooth and confident. It was clear he had spent a lifetime mastering the frontier, understanding it in ways she could not yet imagine. As they rode, he spoke again, not in a questioning way, but in a way that filled the silence without intruding. That road used to have settlements every 10 kilometers. Now only a few remain. People think the frontier is empty, but it is. It's just hard. Only those who learn to endure it survive. Alara listened, absorbing every word. She realized with a mixture of fear and awe that this man saw the world differently than she did. Where she had seen danger, he saw patterns. Where she had seen loneliness, he saw opportunity. Hours passed, the suns disappearing completely and leaving a soft twilight. In the distance, she saw a faint glow, lights flickering against the darkening landscape. The man slowed his horse as they approached, revealing a large ranchstead carved into the rocky terrain. It was a remarkable sight. Water towers, reinforced barns, wind turbines, and neatly arranged fields stretching farther than she could see. The ranch seemed impossible on this hostile world, yet it existed. When they reached the main building, the man dismounted gracefully, offering a hand to her. She hesitated for a moment, then took it. The warmth of his grip was reassuring, and she felt a spark of hope she hadn't dared to feel in days. Inside, the ranch was even more impressive. Technology and ingenuity blended seamlessly. Solar panels and water reclamation systems hummed quietly. Animals grazed in controlled environments, their genetics carefully managed for survival on the harsh planet. Yet the place didn't feel cold or mechanical. It felt lived in, organized, and safe. The man finally spoke her name aloud. Alara Vance, welcome to my ranch. I am Cauldron Holt. You don't have to decide anything tonight. Eat, rest, and drink. Tomorrow, we can talk about what comes next. Alara nodded, her voice caught in her throat. She had survived this long on sheer determination and stubbornness, but it was the rare kindness of this man, this stranger, that gave her a real sense of safety for the first time. She ate a simple meal in the warmth of the ranch, her mind spinning with questions. Who was this man? How did he make life flourish in such a brutal place? Could she trust him completely? As she looked out over the ranch from the windows of the main house, the wind still blowing across the open fields, she felt something new stirring inside her. Hope. Not the fragile, fleeting hope she had brought from Earth, but a deeper, steadier hope. A belief that she could rebuild her life here, on this distant world, under the guidance of a man who understood the frontier in ways she had never imagined. Night fell fully, stars glittering in the clear Caldera 9 sky, and she finally allowed herself to relax. She had been abandoned, yes, but she was not lost. Not yet. Somewhere in the darkness, the trade road stretched endlessly, dangerous and unforgiving. But for the first time, Alara realized that she didn't have to face it alone. And maybe, just maybe, the frontier was not a place of despair, but a place where humans, through courage and ingenuity, could find their strength and survive against all odds. Alara woke early the next morning. The twin suns of Caldera 9 had just risen, casting pale gold light across the sprawling ranch. The wind carried a dry, mineral scent, and the faint hum of machinery in the distance reminded her that life here was different, built not just for survival, but for thriving. Cauldron Holt was already up. She had seen him from her window, moving among the livestock and equipment with a calm confidence that seemed effortless. His movements were deliberate, precise, and purposeful, as though every step was carefully measured to maintain control over the vast land. Watching him, Alara felt a strange mix of awe and curiosity. Breakfast was simple but hearty: fresh bread, a protein-rich paste derived from frontier crops, and a cup of warm, spiced liquid that tasted faintly like coffee. Holt ate slowly, studying her with quiet interest. He didn't ask questions immediately, but his eyes were sharp, assessing. "You survived your first night," he said finally, breaking the silence. "That says a lot about you." Alara blinked. She had expected small talk, maybe some questions about her journey. But the statement, simple and matter-of-fact, made her feel seen. Surviving on Caldera 9 was not easy, and here was a man acknowledging it, not out of pity but respect. I think I did," she replied softly. She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "It was difficult." "The road," Holt nodded once. "Yes, that road will take lives if people are careless. Most settlers underestimate it." Alara swallowed. She realized the man wasn't just strong, he was aware. He understood the world in a way she had not yet grasped. She had imagined strength in physical terms, in force or courage under pressure. But Holt's strength came from knowledge, preparation, and the ability to read danger before it appeared. After breakfast, Holt invited her to walk the ranch. The property was vast, far larger than she had expected. Fields stretched in neat, geometric patterns, separated by sturdy fences. Small irrigation channels ran alongside, shimmering in the morning light. Several large, intelligent animals grazed calmly, supervised by automated systems and human handlers. It was clear that nothing here was left to chance. "This ranch is unusual," she said, her voice tinged with awe. How did you manage all of this?" Holt smiled faintly. "People think it's impossible to control this land," he said. "They think the heat, the wind, the predators, and the dust are unbeatable. But humans are not like other creatures. We adapt, we observe, we plan. Everything here is designed to survive because we can see patterns where others see chaos." Alara's heart quickened. She had never thought about it this way before. On Earth, she had lived in cities where convenience masked effort and planning. Here, she was seeing what human ingenuity could do when necessity demanded it. Every fence, every water channel, every grazing area was not just functional. It was a testament to what humans could accomplish when they refused to give up. Holt led her to the stables, where several ranch hands were busy tending to animals. Each worker seemed different. A former miner checking the hydration systems, a former engineer adjusting energy regulators, a former soldier checking perimeter sensors. Yet all of them moved with purpose, focused and confident, as if they were part of a single organism. "This is your introduction to the team," Holt said. "You don't need to impress anyone, just observe, learn, then decide what you can contribute." Alara nodded. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. For the first time in days, she wasn't alone. She wasn't just surviving, she was part of something larger, something human, something enduring. As the day progressed, Holt gave her small tasks, checking the irrigation channels, cataloging animal feed, and monitoring sensor outputs. They were simple, yet she noticed the precision required to perform them correctly. One small mistake could disrupt a larger system. Each task demanded thought, attention, and care, qualities that humans often underestimated in themselves. By midday, she had a deeper understanding of the ranch. Holt's genius lay not in grand gestures or wealth alone, but in human problem-solving. Every challenge of Caldera 9 had been considered and addressed. Water shortages, predator control, energy management, even labor coordination. And he had built it all to run efficiently without constant oversight. Humans thrived here because they were clever, adaptable, and patient, traits no alien species she had read about could fully match. During a break, she asked Holt a question that had been on her mind since she first saw him. "Why help me? You didn't have to stop on that road. You could have ignored me like everyone else." Holt's gaze softened slightly. "Because humans help each other when it matters," he said. "You survived that road not just by chance but by determination. I saw that. People who refuse to give up belong where life is hardest. They are rare. I respect that." Alara felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had spent so long fearing abandonment and betrayal that she had forgotten humans could also show respect and kindness. It was not pity, it was recognition. It was a belief in the capability of others, something she had not expected to encounter here in this harsh, alien world. The afternoon brought more lessons. Holt taught her to check livestock health, monitor automated systems, and anticipate environmental challenges. Each task was a chance to observe human strength in action, endurance, ingenuity, and the relentless drive to improve and adapt. At one point, an unexpected storm rolled in. Dust and small stones whipped across the landscape, and the winds threatened to tear through the fences and irrigation lines. Most newcomers would have panicked. But Holt moved with calm precision, directing his team to secure animals, reinforce structures, and protect essential systems. Alara followed his instructions, working alongside him and the ranch hands. She realized that human intelligence was not just in technology, but in coordination, quick thinking, and improvisation. When the storm passed, the ranch remained intact, proof of human resilience. By evening, exhaustion settled in, but so did pride. Alara had faced the storm, contributed, and survived. She looked around at the ranch, the lights twinkling like stars on the ground, and she felt a deep connection, not just to the land but to the human effort that made it possible. Holt observed her quietly. "You've done well," he said. "Few newcomers adapt this quickly. You're capable of much more than you realize." For the first time, Alara felt a spark of confidence. She was no longer the abandoned traveler from Earth. She was part of a human story of survival, ingenuity, and hope. The ranch was a living example of what humans could achieve: mastery over a harsh environment through intelligence, perseverance, and collaboration. That night, as she lay in a small, comfortable room prepared for her, she reflected on the day. The road that had once seemed endless and merciless now felt distant. She had been abandoned, yes, but she had also been found. By a man who understood the value of human capability, and by a community built on mutual respect, skill, and ingenuity. She closed her eyes with a renewed determination. The frontier was harsh, unpredictable, and unforgiving, but it was also full of opportunities for those who refused to give up. Humans were not weak. They were adaptable, creative, and strong in ways the galaxy often underestimated. And she would prove that she belonged here. Alara woke to another pale light on Caldera 9, the twin suns peeking over the horizon. The air was cooler than yesterday, but dry and filled with the scent of soil, livestock, and machinery. She stretched and looked out of her small room. The ranch sprawled endlessly in front of her, its fences and irrigation lines forming a precise, almost geometric pattern against the rough terrain. She had walked the property yesterday with Cauldron Holt, observing his methods, learning small tasks, and trying not to feel overwhelmed. Today, however, she was assigned a more substantial role. Holt greeted her as she stepped outside. His expression was calm, but his eyes held a spark that made her heart race with curiosity. "Today, you will help with the perimeter inspections," he said. "It's important to understand how everything works. This ranch survives because of systems, not luck. Humans design, humans maintain, humans adapt." Alara nodded. She had begun to understand the weight behind Holt's words. On Earth, survival often depended on comfort and convenience. Here, every decision had consequences. Every small mistake could ripple across the ranch, affecting animals, crops, water, and energy. It was human precision and care that kept this place alive in a hostile world. They walked together toward the northern boundary of the ranch, where automated sensors hummed quietly. The fences were reinforced with advanced materials resistant to the abrasive dust storms, yet each one was carefully aligned, maintained, and monitored by humans. Alara noticed subtle marks, scratches in the metal bent wires that told a story of previous storms, repairs, and adaptations. Every detail mattered. Holt paused at a corner of the fence. "This spot," he said, "has been here for 10 years. The storms push the ground and stress the fences, but we learn. Humans notice, adjust, and survive." Alara ran her hands along the metal. She felt the cold and strength of the material, but more than that, she felt the thought behind it. This ranch was not just land and equipment, it was human intellect made tangible, a monument to patience and careful work. "Do you really think humans can survive anywhere?" she asked, almost to herself. Holt's gaze swept the horizon, far beyond the limits of the ranch. "Humans adapt better than any other species I know. We plan, we anticipate, we change. Technology helps, but our real advantage is understanding systems. We see patterns, we solve problems. Other species might have power or strength or speed, but humans have resilience and intelligence." Alara felt a thrill of pride. For the first time, she truly understood what it meant to be human on the frontier, not just surviving, but outlasting challenges that others would call impossible. They continued their inspection, moving toward the grazing fields. The animals were unlike any she had seen on Earth. Each species was engineered for the environment, resilient, adaptive, and intelligent enough to respond to human guidance. Holt and the ranch hands monitored them closely, ensuring their health, nutrition, and even mood. It was laborious, but it was also meticulous and rewarding. Alara's task was to help check the water distribution. Pipes carried water from a distant reservoir, managed by sensors that regulated flow and quality. She had to learn the system quickly, reading gauges, adjusting valves, and recording data. At first, she fumbled, unsure of which readings mattered most. Holt watched patiently, only correcting her when necessary, his calm voice guiding her understanding. "You're learning faster than I expected," he said after a while. "It's not just about following instructions. Humans understand logic, patterns, and consequences. That's what allows us to thrive." By midday, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Her muscles ached, but her mind buzzed with new knowledge. She was beginning to see how every element of the ranch connected: water, animals, energy, human labor, and even the weather. Holt's genius was not in having wealth or power. It was in thinking ahead, designing systems, and trusting humans to execute them correctly. During lunch, Holt introduced her to the ranch's automated control center. Screens and panels displayed maps, sensor outputs, weather data, and energy reserves. Alara was amazed at the level of detail. Every section of the ranch could be monitored and adjusted remotely, yet humans were still central to decision-making. "This is where humans and technology meet," Holt explained. "Automation is helpful, but it cannot replace human judgment. Humans notice anomalies, think creatively, and make decisions based on context. That's why this ranch exists where others fail." Alara realized he was right. She had assumed technology would solve everything on a frontier planet. But here, technology was a tool. Humans were the true architects of survival. After lunch, Holt assigned her to help coordinate a small team repairing an old irrigation channel damaged by the last windstorm. Alara worked alongside former engineers, soldiers, and miners, each contributing their skills. It was hard work, but she learned quickly. She discovered that humans were strongest when they collaborated, each applying their unique experience to solve problems efficiently. By late afternoon, the repair was complete. The water flowed smoothly once again, and Alara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had contributed meaningfully to the ranch's survival, not as a passive observer but as an active participant. Humans were not just surviving here, they were shaping the land, mastering it through patience, ingenuity, and collaboration. As the suns began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Holt invited her to walk along the ridge overlooking the ranch. From there, she could see the full scale of his work. Fences stretching for kilometers, grazing fields, water reservoirs, wind turbines, and small buildings scattered strategically across the land. It seemed almost impossible that a single human could manage so much. "This ranch shouldn't exist," she said softly, awe in her voice. "It's too perfect for this planet." Holt smiled faintly. "That's what most people think, but humans are unusual. We see problems, then solve them. We endure, adapt, and improve. That's why we survive where others fail. The frontier is harsh, but it's also our proving ground. Those who work hard, think carefully, and never give up, those are the ones who thrive." Elara felt a sense of belonging that she had never known before. She had been abandoned on a trade road, left to struggle alone. But here, she was learning what it truly meant to be human, capable, resilient, and resourceful. She was part of something larger, a living testament to human strength. That evening, after the day's work, she joined Holt and the ranch hands for a simple meal. Conversation flowed easily. Laughter punctuated the quiet hum of machinery, and Elara felt a deep connection to the people around her. They were all here because they had chosen to survive, to adapt, and to create a life where survival alone was not enough. They were building something greater. As she prepared for bed, Elara reflected on the day. The ranch was not just a place of work. It was a symbol of human determination, creativity, and intelligence. Holt's vision was remarkable, not because he controlled wealth or animals, but because he understood human potential and trusted it to thrive. Elara had survived the road, but now she was thriving on the ranch. She realized that humans were not fragile beings, vulnerable to abandonment or failure. They were strong, clever, and capable of turning even the harshest worlds into homes. She smiled as she lay down, the twin suns' light fading from the sky. The frontier was still dangerous, unpredictable, and often unforgiving. But here, among humans who believed in themselves and each other, it felt like a place of hope. And she knew, without doubt, that she would grow stronger here, learn more, and contribute in ways she had never imagined. Humans had tamed this impossible land, and now she would help them. Elara woke to an unusual stillness. The wind that usually swept across Caldera Nine's plains was absent, leaving an eerie calm. The twin suns rose slowly, casting long shadows over the sprawling ranch. She rubbed her eyes, feeling a mixture of anticipation and unease. Holt had left instructions for her before he departed early that morning to check the distant water reservoirs. Today, she was to manage operations at the ranch in his absence, a responsibility she had never imagined taking so soon. She walked to the control center, her boots crunching against the dusty ground. The screens glowed softly, showing sensor readings, weather data, livestock locations, and energy levels. Normally, everything moved like clockwork. Today, something was different. Several readings flickered irregularly, and a faint alert blinked on one panel. Elara frowned. She had learned the basics from Holt, but now she had to rely on her own judgment. Her hands hovered over the controls as she assessed the situation. A sandstorm was approaching faster than predicted. These storms were not uncommon on Caldera 9, but they were dangerous, especially for livestock and infrastructure. Humans could survive them, but only through careful planning, coordination, and adaptation. She took a deep breath, remembering Holt's lessons. "Humans survive because they adapt," she murmured to herself. "I can do this." First, she alerted the ranch hands via comlinks, instructing them to secure animals, reinforce fences, and check energy backups. She reviewed sensor data to identify weak points in the irrigation and water systems. With careful planning, she organized teams to respond efficiently, using her observations to anticipate potential problems. The storm hit sooner than expected. Dust swirled violently, and the horizon vanished behind a moving wall of sand. Visibility dropped to almost zero. The wind howled, rattling the structures and sending small debris flying across the open fields. Elara's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic would not help anyone. Humans thrived because they thought clearly under pressure, and she intended to prove herself capable. She moved among the teams, giving instructions, checking equipment, and making quick adjustments to systems. Some fences had shifted, and irrigation lines needed rerouting. The animals were restless, but she coordinated handlers to guide them to secure pens. The storm was fierce, but humans worked together, each person contributing their knowledge and skill. Hours passed. The storm battered the ranch, yet Alara and her teams adapted continuously. They reinforced fences with temporary supports, rerouted water to prevent overflow, and ensured energy systems remained operational despite the wind cutting some solar efficiency. Through it all, Alara felt a sense of purpose she had never known. The tasks were difficult, exhausting, and sometimes frustrating, but each success reinforced her understanding of human capability. Humans could survive where others would fail, not because they were stronger, faster, or tougher, but because they thought, adapted, and worked together. By late afternoon, the storm began to subside. The dust settled, leaving a haze over the ranch. The sun peeked through clouds of sand, illuminating the landscape. Alara surveyed the ranch. There were minor damages, some fences leaned, a few panels were dislodged, but nothing critical. The livestock was safe, the irrigation intact, and the energy systems functioning. She allowed herself a brief smile. Holt returned just as she was finishing her checks. He had dust on his clothes and the faint sheen of sweat, but his eyes were calm and observant. "I see you managed the storm," he said quietly, his voice carrying both approval and pride. Alara felt a warmth in her chest. "Yes," she replied. "It was difficult, but we managed. I followed the systems, guided the teams, and everything is intact." Holt studied her, his gaze lingering. "You did more than survive. You coordinated, adapted, and solved problems. That is why humans endure in places others cannot. You're beginning to understand." She felt a thrill of accomplishment. It was more than just surviving a storm. It was proving that humans could master their environment through intelligence and determination. Holt's ranch was not just land, animals, and equipment. It was a living example of human ingenuity, resilience, and the ability to thrive under pressure. The days that followed the storm brought new lessons. Alara worked on energy optimization, learning how to balance solar, wind, and stored power. She monitored livestock health, noting subtle behavioral changes that indicated potential issues. She assisted engineers in adjusting sensor calibrations and improving irrigation flow. Each task reinforced her growing confidence and understanding. Humans survived because they planned, observed, and adapted. One afternoon, while checking perimeter sensors, she noticed something unusual. A small group of alien survey drones hovered near the edge of the ranch. They were silent, unobtrusive, but their presence suggested curiosity, perhaps even interest in the ranch's systems. Alara felt a mixture of apprehension and excitement. She remembered Holt's words: "Humans endure where others fail because they understand systems, anticipate problems, and adapt." The drones might have technology, but humans had intelligence and ingenuity. She activated comms and relayed data to Holt, who arrived shortly after. He examined the drones with calm precision. "They are observing, not attacking," he said. "Most species do not understand human persistence. They underestimate our adaptability. That is their mistake." Alara watched as Holt designed a subtle response, signals that demonstrated the ranch's systems, optimized resource distribution, and human coordination. The drones retreated, clearly puzzled. Humans had not fought, attacked, or destroyed them. They had used observation, strategy, and intelligence to maintain control. Alara felt pride swell within her. She had witnessed, firsthand, the power of human problem-solving. Strength did not always come from physical force. It came from intelligence, cooperation, and understanding. Humans survived and thrived because they used their minds, their foresight, and their adaptability. In the following weeks, Alara became an integral part of the ranch's operations. She coordinated teams, optimized resource distribution, and even suggested improvements based on her observations. Holt noticed her growing competence and trust in her abilities deepened. She was no longer a newcomer who needed guidance. She was a human capable of thinking, solving, and leading. One evening, as the sun set over the vast plains, Holt and Alara walked along a ridge overlooking the ranch. The land stretched endlessly, illuminated by the golden light. It was peaceful, yet every element of the ranch spoke of careful planning and human ingenuity. "You've grown quickly," Holt said. "Humans endure because we adapt. We work together. We observe, plan, and solve problems. You've learned that." Alara nodded, watching the lights of the ranch twinkle below. "I see it now. Humans survive not just by being strong or fast, but by thinking, cooperating, and never giving up." Holt smiled faintly. "Exactly. That is why we thrive here where others fail. That is why this ranch exists where it shouldn't." Alara felt a deep sense of belonging. She had been abandoned on a distant road, left to struggle alone. But here, among humans who believed in themselves, who collaborated, adapted, and persevered, she had found purpose. She was not just surviving, she was thriving. And she understood something new. The frontier would push back, storms would come, challenges would appear. But humans, with intelligence, creativity, and cooperation, would always find a way to endure and succeed. As night fell, the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the ranch. Alara stood at the ridge, looking out over the land she had helped protect and maintain. She felt the quiet strength of humans, resilient, adaptable, and unstoppable. She knew the future would bring more challenges, more tests of ingenuity and endurance. But she also knew that she, like all humans, had the ability to overcome, to adapt, and to thrive. And as she gazed at the horizon, she smiled, ready to face whatever the frontier had in store. Humans had survived here. Humans had thrived. And she would continue that legacy, proving that intelligence, determination, and cooperation were humanity's greatest strengths. The morning sun rose slowly over Caldera 9, casting a warm orange glow across the ranch. Alara Vance stepped outside, taking in the sight of the land that had become more than a home. It had become a symbol of human determination and ingenuity. The ranch stretched far and wide, its fences, irrigation channels, and grazing fields all humming with life and purpose. For Alara, every sunrise was a reminder that humans could thrive where others had failed if they applied their minds, worked together, and never gave up. Over the past weeks, she had grown into her role on the ranch. No longer a newcomer, she was now an integral part of the operations. She coordinated teams, monitored systems, maintained equipment, and guided workers through difficult tasks. She had survived storms, managed resources, and faced unexpected challenges. Most importantly, she had begun to understand what Cauldron Holt had been trying to teach her. Humans were not just survivors, they were architects of their own destiny. Holt appeared at her side, calm and deliberate as always. He had been watching her quietly over the past weeks, assessing her growth, patience, and ingenuity. Today, he had something important to discuss. "Alara," he said, his deep voice steady, "you have proven yourself. You understand this ranch, its systems, and the people who maintain it. You've faced storms, challenges, and unexpected visitors, and you have adapted. You see now what makes humans exceptional." Alara nodded, feeling a swell of pride. She remembered the first day she had walked onto the ranch, abandoned and unsure, and she thought of the road that had nearly cost her life. She had come a long way. I understand," she replied. "Humans endure by thinking, cooperating, and never giving up. That's why this ranch works and why we can survive here." Holt's eyes held a glint of approval. "Exactly. And now I want to offer you something more than just a place to work. You have earned it. I want to discuss a new arrangement. Alara felt a flutter of anticipation and uncertainty. She had not expected this. A new arrangement, she asked cautiously. Holt gestured toward the ridge overlooking the ranch. Sit with me. Look over the land, consider what we have built, and then I want to hear your ideas. They walked together to the ridge, the twin suns bathing the ranch in golden light. Below them, every system, every field, and every building reflected careful planning, hard work, and human ingenuity. The ranch thrived because humans had designed, maintained, and adapted it. You have a unique perspective, Holt said. You arrived here alone, on a road that would have claimed many. You have learned quickly, contributed meaningfully, and proven your ability to understand systems. I see potential in you, not just as a worker, but as a partner. Alara listened intently, her mind racing. A partner? She had not anticipated this. She had feared being alone forever, abandoned and powerless. But now Holt was offering her something different, a chance to shape the future, not just follow instructions. She began, but Holt held up a hand. Before you respond, hear me out, he said. This ranch exists because humans are capable. Not because of one person, but because of people working together, thinking creatively, and refusing to give up. I want you to help lead that effort, not under my command, but alongside me, to plan, innovate, and ensure that humans here continue to thrive. Alara's chest swelled with emotion. She had been abandoned, yes, but she had also been found. Not rescued in the way she had imagined, but acknowledged for her strength, intelligence, and resilience. She realized now that this was more valuable than any contract, any promise, or any place on earth. I would like that, she said finally. I want to help. I want to contribute to learn and to ensure that humans continue to thrive here. Holt nodded. Then it is settled. You are no longer just a newcomer. You are a partner in this endeavor. Together, we will continue to build, adapt, and expand. And together, we will prove what humans can achieve. The following days were filled with planning and collaboration. Alara and Holt worked side by side, analyzing resource allocation, optimizing irrigation, coordinating teams, and developing new strategies to improve ranch efficiency. She suggested minor improvements, small adjustments that made a noticeable difference. Holt listened attentively, respecting her insights and incorporating them into the broader system. Alara marveled at how humans could improve their environment. Where alien species might rely solely on strength or speed, humans used ingenuity, cooperation, and persistence. Every problem, no matter how complex, had a solution if humans approached it with intelligence and care. She began to see her own potential, not just as a survivor, but as a contributor to a larger human effort. One afternoon, they noticed signs of another environmental challenge. A section of soil showed signs of erosion, threatening the water flow to one of the grazing fields. Alara immediately proposed a solution, a combination of reinforced channels, adaptive water flow, and temporary supports to prevent further damage. Holt approved her plan, and she led the team to implement it efficiently. By evening, the erosion was managed, the field secure, and the water flow restored. Holt observed her with quiet satisfaction. You have learned well, he said. Humans endure not because they are perfect, but because they anticipate, adapt, and improve. You have become one of those humans. Alara felt a deep sense of pride. She was no longer the abandoned traveler she had been. She had grown into a human capable of understanding systems, leading teams, and solving problems. She had become a living example of human potential, a testament to what could be achieved through perseverance, intelligence, and cooperation. Over the next weeks, their work continued. Alara took on more responsibility, coordinating logistics, optimizing energy use, and even helping plan expansion projects. Holt respected her contributions, often deferring to her judgment in areas she had shown expertise. Together, they refined the ranch into a model of human ingenuity, a place where humans could thrive in the harshest conditions the frontier could offer. As the days turned into weeks, Ilara began to think beyond the ranch. She envisioned settlements that applied the same principles, humans using intelligence, cooperation, and careful planning to thrive on distant worlds. She realized that the frontier was not a place to fear, but a canvas for human potential. Every challenge was an opportunity to demonstrate resilience, adaptability, and creativity. One evening, after a long day of work, Ilara and Holt stood on the ridge again, watching the twin suns set over the horizon. The ranch glowed softly in the fading light, a living testament to human strength and ingenuity. "Do you see it?" Holt asked, his voice quiet but firm. "This is what humans can do. We endure, we adapt, we thrive. And it is not because of one person but because of our ability to think, plan, and work together." Ilara nodded. "I see it now. Humans survive where others fail. We are clever, adaptable, and persistent, and we can create a future anywhere if we work together." Holt smiled. "Exactly. And now you are part of that future, not just as a worker but as a leader, a planner, and a human capable of shaping the frontier." For the first time, Ilara felt truly at home. She had been abandoned, yes, but she had also been found not through pity, but through recognition of her strength and potential. She realized that humans were not fragile beings. They were intelligent, resourceful, and capable of thriving against all odds. The night fell, stars glittering across the sky of Caldera 9. Ilara stood on the ridge, looking down at the ranch and the lights of human activity spread across the land. She felt a sense of peace, pride, and purpose. Humans had survived the harsh frontier. Humans had adapted, endured, and thrived, and she was part of that legacy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, and new opportunities to demonstrate human ingenuity. But for now, she allowed herself to savor the moment. She was no longer abandoned, no longer alone, and no longer powerless. She had become a living example of human resilience, intelligence, and cooperation. And as she looked at the stars above, she knew one undeniable truth. The frontier was harsh, but humans were stronger. Not because of force, not because of luck, but because of their minds, their determination, and their refusal to give up. Ilara smiled, ready for whatever the future held. The frontier would push back, storms would come, challenges would arise. But humans, herself included, would endure, adapt, and thrive. And in that endurance lay the true strength of humanity. For the first time in her life, Ilara felt not just hope, but certainty. The road that had once abandoned her was now behind her. Ahead lay a future full of possibility, human potential, and the promise of achievement. She would walk that road, not alone, but as part of a human story that refused to be defeated. And in that story, she would play her part, proving that humans could survive, thrive, and build a future wherever they chose.